Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 8 based on novel. So let's start. Lin Dong stood outside the Ninetail village and peered into the distance. The land shook as a black torrent surged over while accompanied by an overflowing aura of dreadfulness. It was like a ferocious ancient beast that was displaying its extraordinary might. The black torrent quickly arrived in front of Lin Dong before it came to a halt and a metal tower-like figure shot out. The figure heavily landed before Lin Dong like a mountain. In that instant, the entire loud land violently shook for a moment. Big brother. Little Flame looked Lin Dong as a grin was revealed on his rough face. Lin Dong smiled but did not say anything unnecessary. Let's go. Little Flame nodded. He glanced at the Ninetail village behind Lin Dong, only to discover that the space there had begun to distort a little. After which, the entire mountain and the village slowly vanished in an extremely strange fashion. This scene stunned Little Flame. His senses swept past and surprise immediately flashed across his tiger eyes. This was because he discovered it had really become empty. Even the slightest energy fluctuation could not be felt. Let's go. The Ninetail village will disappear for a period of time. However, Lin Dong stepped forward. He raised his head to look at the sky above and laughed. When they reappear, it is likely that the entire demon region will be shaken. Little Flame fell into thought as he took a big step forward and followed Lin Dong. They stopped in front of the tiger-devouring army. As a pair of tiger eyes looked at the army before them, a stern expression flitted across them and a low shout sounded, "This is my big brother Lin Dong. Your lives are mine and my life belongs to Big Brother. Hence, from now onwards, all your lives also belong to him." His words were long-winded but blunt. It seemed that the demonic beast world had done away with the many fancy mannerisms of the humans. From a certain point of view, the demonic beasts did not easily give their loyalty when compared to humans. However, once they did so, it would be equivalent to completely owning them. In the past, every person in this tiger-devouring army was at the lowest level of this world. They were ordered around and enslaved by others. All their pride was lost and they were akin to walking zombies. In the end, it was Little Flame who had pulled them from that state and used his inherited essence blood to change them. He also allowed them to become the tiger-devouring army whose name made countless people shake in fear. He gave them a second life. In their eyes, Little Flame was the king who ruled them. Understood? Hence, there was not a single protest from the entire tiger-devouring army after they heard Little Flame's shout. All they did was deeply acknowledge in unison. You must be really bored. Lin Dong was somewhat helpless in the face of this as he frowned and chided Little Flame. After which, he leaped onto a huge black beast while Little Flame grinned and followed. Let's go. This tiger-devouring army, which was filled with ferocity, once again turned into a torrent after Little Flame cried out. It let out a rumbling sound as it traveled into the distance. Following their departure, this entire region had become completely empty and quiet. Big brother, the mountain gathering of Deep Lightning Mountain will begin tomorrow. I have already ensured that preparations are mostly done. Those 5 warriors are willing to attack with us. Little Flame sat beside Lin Dong as the army swept forth. Soon after, he grabbed at the empty space in front of him with a large hand while his expression turned ferocious. The time has finally come for me to act against that person. I have endured a year for this day. Knowing how to endure is not a bad thing. Lin Dong smiled and said, I certainly have not reached Big Brother's level. In order to deal with Lin Liangqian back then, you endured for many years. However, that fellow's final expression was really exhilarating to see. Little Flame smilingly said. He had followed Lin Dong as they walked out from the tiny Qingyang town and had gone through fire and water with Lin Dong. Little Flame had also bore witness to how that once weak young man had rose a step at a time. Lin Dong smiled faintly. He felt a little emotional about how they, a human, a tiger and a marten, had roamed the land. It was likely that none of them back then would have imagined things would become like this a couple of years later. Back then, even little Martin was merely a little demonic spirit who was constantly worried about when he would disappear. How is the overall strength of Deep Lightning Mountain like? Lin Dong reminisced those memories for a moment before pulling his mind back to reality. What they were about to do now was no small matter. Xu Shong was the demon commander of Deep Lightning Mountain. His power was extremely deep-rooted. Although Little Flame had secretly managed to create some flames of rebellion, both Little Flame and him would have to pay a great price if they were to underestimate the other party. This was something that the usually cautious Lin Dong would do his best to avoid. On the surface, the overall all-strength of Deep Lightning Mountain is the demon commander Xu Shong and the 9 great generals. Little Flame's expression grew serious now that they were discussing proper matters. However, based on some secret information I received over the past year, there is also a shadow guard at Xu Shong's side. Shadow guard? Lin Dong slightly lifted his brow. This shadow guard is the subordinate that Xu Shong truly trusts. However, he does not oversee Deep Lightning Mountain. Even the 9 great generals seldom have a chance to see him. However, one must not underestimate this person's strength. Little Flame explained in a deep voice. When I arrived at Deep Lightning Mountain 1 year ago, I saw this shadow guard defeat an advanced profound death stage expert in a single strike. Based on my speculation, even if that shadow guard cannot compare to Xu Shong, it is likely that he has also stepped into the perfect profound death stage. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed a little. Looks like this Deep Lightning Mountain was indeed quite strong. It was likely that if he had not found Little Flame this time around, the latter's plan would only have a 50% chance of succeeding. However, this did match Little Flame's character of seeking great gains from dangerous situations. I was originally also quite worried about this. However, with Big Brother joining us, there is no longer a need to be worried about that shadow guard. As for the others, we should have a good chance at victory as long as those 5 warriors do not turn their backs on us. Little Flame paused before he continued. Of course, the key person is still Xu Shong. That fellow is only 1 step away from stepping into the samsara stage. Lin Dong nodded. If Xu Shong had really advanced into the samsara stage, the difficulty of their plan would be raised by several levels. At that time, it was likely that those 5 warriors would not have the courage to rebel. We will see what happens tomorrow, Lin Dong said. He really wished to see just how many tricks that demon commander of Deep Lightning Mountain had up his sleeve. Yes, Big Brother, let's hurry to somewhere close to Deep Lightning Mountain. We will meet the 5 great generals there. At that time, we will see if Big Brother can remove the deep dark ghost seal on their bodies. They will not dare to fight against Xu Shong with us with this thing on them, Little Flame said. Lin Dong nodded. He lifted his head and peered into the distance. It was his desire to see just how powerful this so-called demon commander in comparison to the Yimo. Half a day later, the army that was galloping like a torrent suddenly reduced its speed. A continuous stretch of tents lay before them while all kinds of noises soared towards the sky. Lin Dong could faintly see the outline of a mountain that seemed to stretch on endlessly while a ferocious aura blew over from far away. This should be Deep Lightning Mountain. There were evidently many units gathered in this campgrounds. Hence, a commotion broke out in the campsite when the tiger-devouring army appeared while accompanied by a monstrous ferocious aura. Many somewhat terrified eyes looked over. In an instant, the entire campsite became much quieter. It seemed that the tiger-devouring army not only frightened the other factions but even those from the same faction did not dare provoke them. The tiger-devouring army completely ignored those terrified gazes and barbarically charged in. After which, they occupied the best spot in the campgrounds while causing a complete mess. Little Flame instructed the tiger-devouring army to set up camp. Only after night approached did he secretly lead Lin Dong out of the camp and rushed into the dense forest behind. The 2 of them traveled through the forest. A couple of minutes later, their bodies gradually slowed. There was a bonfire rising beside a cliff to their front and it was possible to vaguely see a couple of sturdy and well-built figures. Ha ha, General Yang, you are once again the last to arrive. The Lin Dong duo rushed out of the forest and landed beside the cliff. After which, a somewhat rough and arrogant laughter was heard. Lin Dong lifted his gaze and looked over, only to see 5 people standing beside the bonfire. Their bodies were tall and well built. Crisscrossing scars covered their naked arms while their eyes flickered with an ominous light. All of their auras were extremely ferocious, and it was obvious that they were not ordinary people. Little Flame glanced at the 5 of them. After which, he turned his body and pointed at Lin Dong. "This is my big brother Lin Dong." Lin Dong could feel that the 5 great generals were stunned when Little Flame's voice sounded. Soon after, they looked at him in an absurd fashion. One of them involuntarily grinned and laughed. "General Yang, don't tell me that this initial profound death stage human is the big brother whom you said could match a perfect profound death stage expert. General Yang, you should know how risky it will be tomorrow. Hence, this matter is not a joke." Another man, who had a metal-like long black tail entwined around his waist, also frowned and spoke in a deep voice. "He can undo the deep dark ghost seals on our bodies. This general is not very convinced." A man whose body was covered in deep yellow scales glanced at Lin Dong. He was rather hot-tempered. Immediately, he stood up and spoke in an angry voice. "You are asking us to risk our lives for you like this? I will not do it. It seems that the plan tomorrow can be cancelled." He swung his hand after speaking and was about to turn around and leave when he saw that a skinny figure had already appeared in front of him. After which, he saw the young human before his eyes smile at him. Resplendent green light accompanied by a dragon roar abruptly reverberated across the mountain. "You?" Green light exploded in the man's eyes as an ominous look suddenly flickered on his face. His feet heavily stomped onto the ground and the land crumbled. Deep yellow yuan power turned into layers of deep yellow turtle armor in front of him at a shocking speed. Strange markings flickered on the turtle armor, filling it with a kind of toughness that could not be destroyed. When the turtle armor was formed, green light wrapped around a fist as it flew forward. Bang! A muffled sound spread. After which, the pupils of the other 4 shrunk when they saw the turtle armor shield, which could block a half-step to perfect profound death stage expert, directly collapse at this moment. The frail fist had already penetrated through when the turtle armor was shattered and heavily landed on the man's chest. An energy ripple that was visible to the naked eye spread outwards while that figure flew backwards like a cannonball. It smeared across the ground, creating a 300 feet long mark before ruthlessly shooting into a mountain wall. Shattered rocks flew and the entire place was a complete mess. At this moment, the young man beside the bonfire finally smiled slightly and lifted his head. He looked at the 4 stunned and speechless generals. "Now, do you still have any doubts?" Dust rose and gradually fell on the ground, which lay in ruins, while the tall young man smilingly stood beside the bonfire. However, his smile caused the 4 powerful generals by the side to feel a chill sweep through their bodies. The strange and condescending looks which originally filled their eyes slowly receded. The person whom Lin Dong had sent flying with a single punch earlier was of similar strength with them. Although there were only a short span of time to react, he had still been able to bring out the defensive technique that he specialized in to respond to Lin Dong's attack. Even they would find it quite troublesome to deal with that turtle armor defense earlier. It was basically impossible for them to break it with a single punch like Lin Dong had done. The young man before them did not waste his breath with any unnecessary words in the face of their doubt. He merely used a simple and barbaric punch to make them to swallow all the doubt in their mouths. At this moment, even the most foolish person understood that the strength of the young man before them was not limited to what they could see on the surface. The bonfire rose as firelight shined onto the faces of the 4. Their expressions fluctuated in bewilderment. It was a long while later before their tensed bodies slowly relaxed. "Like I asked before, have you had your fun yet?" Little Flame, who had been wordlessly standing by the side, finally laughed coldly and remarked. There was a sharp ferocity in his eyes as he stared at the 4 of them. "Don't be angry, Brother Yang." The rough-faced man with a bare upper body hurriedly smiled and spoke when he heard this. "This is an important matter and is related to the lives of everyone here and our subordinates. Hence, we must be cautious." Little Flame stared at that person. Those scarlet tiger eyes caused one to shudder. "All of you should stop entertaining other thoughts. If I want to be blunt about tomorrow, my brother and I are sufficient to deal with it. As for the deep dark ghost seals on your bodies, I think we should just leave them as they are." The four of them smiled awkwardly. They were clearly extremely afraid of Little Flame and did not dare to say anything in response. Ha ha, please do not mind him too much. Little Flame has a bad temper. Everyone understands the importance of the matter tomorrow. Hence, we will need to rely on you when the time comes. Lindong smiled. He paused for a moment before continuing, however. I believe that no one here has any doubts about me now, right? What are you saying, Brother Lindong? We are the ones who offended you first. The four of them hurriedly said. However, they did not feel the slightest friendliness when they saw Lindong's smile. Instead, they felt waves of terrifying danger. If they had to choose, they felt that Little Flame, who constantly chose to expose his ferocity, was a little more comforting than this smiling big brother of his. Bang! The distant mountain wall cracked and a somewhat miserable figure rushed out. After which, he once again landed beside the bonfire. Green and red color interchanged on his face. However, he eventually cupped his hands together towards Lindong. Brother Lindong is really strong. It is us who were blind previously. Everyone, please state your identities. Little Flame walked over and snorted coldly. Brother Lindong, I am the Metal Lion General, Chen Tong. The rough-faced man with bare upper body cupped his hands together and smilingly said. Demon Ape General, Mo Hu. A man with two exceptionally long arms and large hands grinned. Golden Eagle General, Jiao Ling. The somewhat skinny man with penetrating eyes said. Leopard General, Gya. The man, who had a metal-like black tail entwined around his waist, cupped his fists together and said. Mountain Armor General, Po Shan. The last person who spoke was the man, who had been sent flying by Lindong with a single punch. Lindong cupped his hands towards them and chuckled, Lindong. The atmosphere relaxed slightly after all of them introduced themselves. After Po Shan's example previously, the five generals did not dare to underestimate Lindong. That punch from Lindong earlier was sufficient to deter them. Hand your arms to me. I will help all of you undo the deep dark ghost seal. Lindong sat down and looked towards the five. He did not waste any time with unnecessary words. He was clearly aware of the biggest doubt within these five individuals' hearts. The reason they had agreed to fight together with Little Flame was largely because they had heard that Lindong could remove the deep dark ghost seals within their bodies. Chen Tong and the rest were startled when they saw how straightforward Lindong was. After all, this was a kind of bargaining chip he could use against them. Ha ha, Brother Lindong is truly magnanimous. Chen Tong was the first to smile. After which, he extended his arm, revealing a black seal. However, its color was deeper than that of Little Flame. Clearly, this deep dark ghost seal had already deeply submerged into his body. Lindong's palm landed on Chen Tong's hand as threads of black light flickered at his fingertips. Soon after, white smoke began to rise from the latter's arm. The deep dark ghost seal faintly let out a screech. It continued to squirm on his arm, appearing like a strange face. The few people by the side anxiously watched this scene. None of them dared to breathe too loudly. The strange face continued to wiggle while black light danced at Lindong's fingertips as the deep dark ghost seal gradually began to fade. A dozen minutes later, the black light on Lindong's hand brightened as he curled his hand and grabbed. One could only watch as the deep dark ghost seal on Chen Tong's arm was directly extracted. After which, it turned into a black light seal that appeared in Lindong's palm. The black seal appeared like the face of a ghost as it swam around Lindong's palm. It emitted a dark and evil ripple. This, has it been removed? Chen Tong and the rest were startled as they looked at the deep dark ghost seal on Lindong's palm. Wild joy began to surge within their eyes. Lindong smiled and nodded. He closed his hand and shattered the deep dark ghost seal. Black light flashed on his palm as devouring power surged, directly swallowing the seal. Brother Lindong is indeed extraordinary. Chen Tong spoke excitedly. They were well aware of how difficult it was to deal with this deep dark ghost seal. They had thought of many methods, but this thing was like a maggot in their bones, leaving them helpless against it. Yet, Lin Dong had removed the seal in an extremely relaxed manner. I happen to possess a method to subdue this thing. Lin Dong replied smilingly. By relying on the devouring ancestral symbol within his body, Lin Dong was obviously able to destroy this seal from its root. Did you really think that I was lying to you before? Little Flame frowned and demanded. Ha ha, please don't be angry, Brother Yang. It's just that even you should know of how powerful this deep dark ghost seal is. Chen Tong laughed in an embarrassed manner. It was true that they only had a 50% trust in Little Flame's words from before. Lin Dong waved his hand. He looked at the other 4 generals who were staring at him. Who's next? Me? My turn. The 4 of them cried out in unison. However, their faces quickly reddened, before they smiled awkwardly and gave in to each other. Only then did they let Po Shan, whom Lin Dong had punched earlier, to go first. Hee, Brother Lin Dong, I have offended you earlier. I hope that a great man like you can forgive me. Po Shan smilingly said to Lin Dong. There was some intention to fawn over Lin Dong in his voice. Lin Dong grinned. He extended his hand and repeated what he did earlier. A dozen minutes later, the deep dark ghost seal in Po Shan's body was sucked out. Po Shan rubbed his now black seal-free arm. His eyes had become a little red from emotion. It was likely that he felt extremely terrible living this prisoner-like life under the control of another. Subsequently, Lin Dong used the same method to destroy the deep dark ghost seals in the bodies of the other 3 individuals. All right, the deep dark ghost seals in your bodies have all been removed. Lin Dong patted his hands and smiled at the rather emotional 5 great generals. Thank you, Brother Lin Dong. Chen Tong and the rest hurriedly voiced their thanks. The removal of this bomb from their bodies was clearly a great relief to them. Lin Dong gently smiled and shook his head. We are all on the same boat. It is only natural for me to help. Brother Lin Dong, aren't you afraid that we might simply leave after helping us remove the deep dark ghost seal? After all, dealing with Xu Shong involves a great risk. Jiao Ling's sharp eyes suddenly looked at Lin Dong and asked. The faces of the other 4 stiffened after those words were said. Little Flame by the side also slightly leaned his body forward. His eyes were ferocious and frightening. However, there was no change in Lin Dong's expression. He merely stared at the bonfire as he said, the matter tomorrow is indeed quite dangerous. However, I will say first something that might seem like a joke to all of you. Even if only my brother and I were to act tomorrow, Xu Shong will definitely die. However, things might be a little more troublesome without everyone. Lin Dong paused. He raised his head and looked at the various expressions on the faces of the 5. Finally, he smiled. That is all. The area around the bonfire was a little quiet. Chen Tong and the rest gazed at the young face in front of them. Although the latter had a gently smile on his face, they could gradually detect an unfathomable feeling from under that smile. No wonder even someone as ferocious as Little Flame was willing to call him Big Brother. The person before them was not a simple individual. Xu Shong has yet to step into the samsara stage. Moreover, even if he has really reached that stage, he might not necessarily win, ha ha. I hope that everyone will not think that I do not know my limits by speaking in such a manner. The night was quiet while the bonfire rose. However, Chen Tong and the rest vaguely felt a powerful pressure when they looked at the smiling young man. Such a pressure was different from the ferocious aura that Little Flame purposely gave off. It was akin to a sharp blade that had not shown itself. Even a simple scabbard was unable to hide the astonishing sharpness that it contained. The words Lin Dong had said were indeed arrogant. This was especially under the precondition his initial profound death stage strength. However, none of the 5 great generals dared to have any doubts at this very moment. Chen Tong and the rest faced each other. Finally, they slowly nodded before cupping their hands towards Lin Dong and speaking in a deep voice, as long as Brother Lin Dong can finish off Xu Shong, we will be able to help deal with any additional trouble. At that time, Brother Yang will become the new demon commander of Deep Lightning Mountain. Lin Dong looked at the 5 of them and nodded gently. He stood up and looked towards the night sky in the distance and the creeping ferocious beast like Deep Lightning Mountain as his eyes slightly narrowed. Demon Commander Huh. I will meet you tomorrow. Deep Lightning Mountain Range was quite a famous place even in the entire Beast War region. The most important reason for this was that this was the place where one of the top 8 factions of the Beast War region, Deep Lightning Mountain, was located. As the big boss of this area, Deep Lightning Mountain ruled the massive area within tens of thousands of miles around Deep Lightning Mountain Range. All factions within this vast land were included under Deep Lightning Mountain. Deep Lightning Mountain was undoubtedly the overlord of this place. Today was clearly the most festive day in Deep Lightning Mountain over the entire year. Every year, Deep Lightning Mountain would hold a grand mountain gathering. Every gathering, the great generals who usually led their own subordinates on campaigns outside would all make an appearance. At the same time, those various large and small factions that were located within Deep Lightning Mountain's vast land would bring their tributes and pay homage. As such, the scope of this gathering was exceptionally grand. Hence, amazement could not help but flash across Lin Dong's eyes when he followed Little Flame into the territory of Deep Lightning Mountain Range and saw the various groups gathering from all directions. It seemed that this Deep Lightning Mountain was indeed rather impressive. Deep Lightning Mountain's territory stretches for tens of thousands of miles. There are countless factions of various sizes living within this territory. Although Deep Lightning Mountain ignores the fights between these factions, all of them must pay an annual tribute to Deep Lightning Mountain, Little Flame laughed and said upon seeing Lin Dong's surprised expression. Lin Dong nodded slightly. It was just like an empire. Deep Lightning Mountain was the royalty while the other factions were the subjects. They had to acknowledge the Deep Lightning Mountain as their leader in order to survive in this place. Otherwise, when Deep Lightning Mountain's army arrived, there would definitely be a bloody massacre. The strong devoured the weak. This was a never-changing rule in the Demon region. The tiger-devouring army slowed down as they approached Deep Lightning Mountain. It slowly passed through like a black torrent, causing many to look over with terrified expressions. Anyone who lingered within the territory of Deep Lightning Mountain was familiar with this powerful fighting force. Some of the factions had even suffered quite a great loss at their hands. The pass which led into Deep Lightning Mountain was clearly heavily guarded. Many pairs of sharp eyes swept over the visitors entering Deep Lightning Mountain. The tiger-devouring army approached, causing the atmosphere in the pass to become tense. Those originally cold and sharp expressions of the armies in the past turned a little uneasy. Their eyes contained great fear. Ha ha, General Yang has arrived. Atop the towering checkpoint, a tanned-faced man with black scale armor covering his body looked down at the tiger-devouring army below. He cupped his hands together with a smiling face. I believe that Brother Yang should be aware of the rules of Deep Lightning Mountain. All armies can only station themselves at the foot of Deep Lightning Mountain. Little Flame glanced at the man atop the pass. The corners of his mouth split open as he replied, General Tian Yi, is your Sky Crocodile army trying to stop my devouring tiger army? The expression of the somewhat black atop the pass changed slightly. He laughed dryly. What is General Yang talking about? I am merely following the rules. You can look for the Demon Commander if you have any objections. There were many people in the surroundings of the pass who were quietly speechless as they watched this scene. However, no one dared to speak. Everyone knew that General Yang and General Tian Yi of Deep Lightning Mountain did not see eye to eye with each other. Back then, both parties had even fought against each other. However, the final result caught everyone by surprise. The Sky Crocodile army, which was known for its great fighting strength, had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of the newly established tiger-devouring army. It was also precisely after that battle did the tiger-devouring army gradually become known as the strongest army of Deep Lightning Mountain. Little Flame merely smiled faintly when he heard Tian Yi bringing Xu Shong's name out to suppress him. However, there was a murderous glint deep within his eyes. This Tian Yi was directly under Xu Shong. He would clearly be an obstruction if they wished to attack Xu Shong. Devouring Tiger Army, listen up. Rest at the foot of the mountain. Little Flame waved his large hand and a thunderous cry sounded. Understood. An orderly, low and deep cry that contained an unconcealable baleful aura echoed, after which the large devouring tiger army directly sat down on the spot. In this way, they blocked half of the pass. Chien Yi's expression was a little dark when he saw this. Little Flame's act clearly did not give him any face. "Big brother, let's go. We'll head to Deep Lightning Mountain." Little Flame leaped down from the huge beast and spoke smilingly to Lin Dong. "I?" Lin Dong nodded and also jumped down. "Wait, who is this person? Why does he appear so unfamiliar?" Chien Yi suddenly questioned from atop the pass. Little Flame suddenly lifted his head. His pair of scarlet tiger eyes revealed a murderous look as he stared at General Chien Yi and spoke in a threatening voice. "Do you really believe that I don't dare to kill you?" Chien Yi's expression changed as vigorous yuan power surged from within his body. It was as though he was worried that the violent Little Flame would attack. "Ha ha, I am Lin Dong. General Yang and I are brothers. I hope to take this opportunity to meet Demon Commander." Lin Dong stopped Little Flame. After which, he laughed towards General Chien Yi. "Brother?" These words not only caused Chien Yi to be startled. The many leaders from the various factions around were also stunned as they look over. Since when did this ferocious tiger, who was numb to killing, have a brother? Moreover, from the looks of it, he was even a human. "This is my big brother." Little Flame coldly snorted. However, the expressions of the surrounding individuals changed when he spoke. When had they ever seen this arrogant and ferocious tiger, whom even the demon commander could not tame, willing to address someone as big brother? "Lin Dong? Are you the human who was rumored to have defeated the governor of Blood Python City?" Chien Yi frowned and recalled something before he suddenly asked. Some rumors about Lin Dong had spread and even he had heard about him. Lin Dong smiled and nodded. Chien Yi looked deeply at Lin Dong upon seeing this. He mused slightly before nodding with a smile. "Please ascend the mountain." Although he heard that Lin Dong had defeated that Cao Ying, the latter was merely a small city governor and could not be compared to Deep Lightning Mountain. This Lin Dong might have some ability, but he was far from being as threatening as Little Flame. "Thank you, General Chien Yi." Lin Dong cupped his hands together. After which, he and Little Flame crossed the tightly guarded pass. The both of them swiftly disappeared into the distance along the mountain path. General Chien Yi looked at those two figures who had disappeared into the distance as both of his eyes narrowed. He called a subordinate over. "Report this matter to Demon Commander." "Humph. Let me see what tricks you can pull." General Chien Yi laughed coldly towards the spot where the Lin Dong duo had disappeared after his subordinate withdrew. Deep Lightning Mountain was unusually tall. Many grand halls stood atop the mountain. Light formations appeared in the sky from time to time. It was the defensive measures of Deep Lightning Mountain. Presently, the main peak of Deep Lightning Mountain was already filled with a sea of people. Various noises gathered together and soared towards the clouds, seemingly tearing them apart. Lin Dong followed Little Flame as they dashed straight towards the tallest peak where an incomparably overbearing hall stood. A continuous stream of people continued to surge in. The mountain gathering of this Deep Lightning Mountain was indeed frighteningly grand. Little Flame was after all the top general of Deep Lightning Mountain. Hence, he directly led Lin Dong into the main hall under countless watching gazes before they headed straight for the grand seats right at the front and sat down. Little Flame was considered an important person who was only inferior to the demon commander of Deep Lightning Mountain. Various pairs of eyes looked over the moment he sat down. After which, some of them turned towards Lin Dong as puzzled looks flashed across their eyes. It was likely that they were guessing Lin Dong's identity. However, Lin Dong chose to ignore these gazes. Both of his eyes slightly lowered, making himself appear akin to a meditating old monk. His quiet manner did not appear to match this noisy place. Several generals continued to appear soon after the Little Flame duo were seated. 5 of them were Chen Tong's group whom they had met last night. However, merely exchanged a brief look upon seeing the Little Flame duo. Subsequently, they took their own seats. Given Lin Dong's shrewd eyes, however, he was still able to see some anxiety. After all, what they planned to do today would cause a huge commotion within this Beast War region. Other than these 5 generals, Lin Dong also saw the 3 other generals who were considered Xu Shang's direct subordinates. One of them was General Qian Yi, whom they had met earlier. The other person also looked familiar. He was Mountain General Meng Shan, who had attempted to lead some men to the Nine-Tail village with the intention of capturing Lin Dong. This person had a somewhat gloomy face when he saw the Lin Dong duo. He let out a cold snort and took his seat. That last remaining great general was a beautiful woman with a pretty face and unusually sexy figure. On her beautiful pointed face was the tattoo of a cat. At a glance, she seemed to have a kind of wild beauty. Her appearance attracted many pairs of eyes. However, she completely ignored these gazes. Her eyes looked directly to the side of Lin Dong. Of course, if one wished to be more precise, she seemed to be looking at Little Flame. Something was not quite right with her gaze. It seemed to contain a hidden bitterness. Lin Dong lifted his brow slightly. After which, he glanced at Little Flame, who had not even lifted his head, and laughed. What is the matter? If someone else asked the question, Little Flame would likely ignore him. However, since Lin Dong was the one who asked, he could only helplessly reply, I don't know, she is a troublesome woman to deal with. She was beaten by me once, after which, she kept on bugging me. Is she directly related to Xu Shang? Lin Dong asked in surprise. Not really, she seems to be someone from the 9 Lives Heavenly Cat tribe. She owes Xu Shang a favor and is here to repay it. Little Flame explained. 9 Lives Heavenly Cat tribe. Lin Dong was startled. He was a little surprised that it was one of the 8 great king tribes. It seemed like this woman was not simple. Hey, you beat me the last time and we agreed that we will spar again. After so long, why didn't you come and look for me? The lady suddenly walked over while Lin Dong and Little Flame were softly conversing. She did not mince her words as she stared directly at Little Flame. This caused Lin Dong to be quite curious. He had met many beautiful women, but it was the first time he had met such a hot and bold one. Little Flame frowned and somewhat impatiently replied, I have no time. You? The lady was clearly extremely haughty. Her eyebrows bunched together after receiving this reply from Little Flame. However, she quickly softened her stance and frowned as she glanced at Lin Dong and asked in an astonished manner, You actually brought a human to join the mountain gathering? A human? Lin Dong could see a strange meaning in her eyes. It was likely that she would have an urge to draw her weapon if Lin Dong was a woman. This is my big brother. Little Flame's expression sunk. The lady was startled when she heard this. She was clearly aware of Little Flame's character. Even Xu Shang could not make him to submit. Yet, this fellow had actually acknowledged a big brother. Moreover, she could hear true respect and emotion from Little Flame's voice. This was the first time that she had seen this extremely ruthless man treat another person in such a manner. Hence, the lady's originally somewhat arrogant face swiftly became gentle in front of Lin Dong's somewhat teasing gaze. After which, she smiled towards the latter. Big brother Lin Dong, this is the first time we have met. This younger sister is called Hua Miao. The surrounding people, including Chen Tong and the other great generals, had a change in expression when her words sounded. All of them had a strange expression in their eyes. Since when did this arrogant and seemingly untamable little wildcat become so refined? This video will end here.